All right, good evening, folks, and thanks so much for joining us. We're glad that you're here and we're excited to be able to tell you more about financial aid at Eastside Prep. We will go ahead and introduce ourselves. And so, first of all, my name is Cheryl Miller. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management at Eastside Prep, and I'm really happy to be joined this evening by my colleague, Casey Otley. So I'm just gonna take us through and you will be able to see who we are and what we look like. Casey, how are you this evening?
I'm wonderful, Cheryl, and how are you?
I'm doing well. And you know what, Casey, it looks like you are over at UW right now. Is that in fact true?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking back towards EPS from the UW right now.
Love it, love it. So looking in the direction of EPS, and is there a particular reason why you chose the University of Washington as your background this evening, Casey?
Because my two children are over there right now, so it makes me feel closer to them.
Makes you feel closer to them. And I bet you are well acquainted with what it is like to be affording and financing a college education. And I'm sure that's something that our viewers are thinking about as well. Not only affording independent school, but all of this investment that you're making in your children's education and what this is all about. That is what we're going to talk about this evening. So, Casey, thanks so much for joining us as our Director of Finance and Operations. We are part of our financial aid committee here at Eastside Prep, and we're really excited to be able to acquaint you with all of the many opportunities that we have in the realm of aid. So with that said, want to give you an overview of what we're going to tackle this evening. First, we want to give you a sense of what our program is all about. We would then like to talk with you about some examples of awards that actual EPS families are receiving. And we want to give you some instructions on how to apply for aid. So we hope that together this content will really give you a good sense for what to expect in terms of the eligibility for aid and how the process works. And of course, we want to hear from you about questions that you have. So if you have questions as we're going through the presentation, feel free to send them in as we go. Otherwise, you are more than welcome to send us questions after we have presented our content or after today. You can always get in touch with Casey and me if there's other things that you're wondering about and needing to know. So first of all, why do we do all this? We really feel as a school community that it's important to be guided by a couple of our mission points when it comes to why we do financial aid at EPS, and that's really about acting responsibly and leading compassionately. We know that we want to make this education as accessible as possible to as many students as possible, and so really removing these financial barriers is important to us. Currently, we're distributing over $1.5 million in aid, and that aid goes up every year. Casey, can you tell us about how that works in terms of percent of aid as a percent of budget, just so that people understand more of what that means?
Yeah. As you mentioned, Cheryl, we are growing that each year. We base it, the Board of Trustees determines where it's going to be this next year and kind of a path that we want to go to. So it grows as a percentage of our tuition, and then as our tuition goes, so the bucket grows also. So it's nice that we've been able to continue to grow that over the last number of years, as long as you and I have been here.
Yes, it is an awesome commitment. And so what that equates to is roughly $30,000 per student in form of grant. That's the average aid award. Just so that folks are aware, our current annual tuition is $39,000, just so you have a sense of how that squares away with tuition. And then we will talk a little bit about some non-tuition costs as well. About 1 in 10 of our students is receiving need-based support from EPS. So we're continuing to increase this commitment. It's an important commitment to us, and just wanted to give you the big picture on what that looks like for us. So what does this aid cover? Casey, can you step us through a little bit about what some of the different categories are of the things that folks are receiving when they are receiving that need-based support?
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly the one that we all think about, and the largest one right up front, is tuition. So not only the tuition, but as we note here, kind of the activities and athletics that go along with that. Laptop. So new students come in, pick up a new laptop, purchase a new laptop, and typically get one every 4 years. So the same percentage aid as we'll talk about gets applied to laptop, and on down the list here. Books, definitely those who want to use our transportation options, and then our education beyond the classroom, which I'll let Cheryl talk more about that.
Yeah, well, we can go into a little bit more detail about how Education Beyond the Classroom aid works, but we will definitely be able to talk about, how this all covers and is applied. So in terms of who should apply for aid, Casey, what would you say in terms of, if anybody were to walk up to you and say, should I be applying for aid at EPS? Is it worth my time? What should I be thinking about? What would you tell them?
I would say if it is making them question whether they should think about going to Eastside Prep, then take that question away and apply for financial aid. Just don't want anybody, I don't want the financial aspect of going to an independent school be something that holds people back from expressing that interest by applying.
And Casey, in addition to our families that are newly applying to EPS, should enrolled families also apply for aid? Do we reapply for aid? How does that work?
Yeah, so each year families do reapply. Most reapply, and it's a similar grant each year as a student goes through their years with us. There are some families that need it for a short time and just ask for it for this year for whatever reason it may be. So generally, folks continue on through, but anybody can ask anytime, and we will do what we can.
Great. Okay. So want to give you all some examples of how this is working, and want to be able to show you a little bit about what folks would be experiencing in terms of aid. So walking you through these examples, I am hopeful that we'll be able to give you a sense for how this works practically in the lives of families, because I think a lot of families are thinking about not only what is the tuition cost, but they're also thinking about then, how does this square with our other household expenses, income, things like that. So Sophie started with us in 5th. Oh, let me make a quick note, which is that these are totally different names, totally different situations that we're applying to illustrate these to you. So lest you think that we are actually telling you about the names of EPS students who are receiving this aid, I wanted just to make really abundantly clear that these names and facts have all been changed, but the dollar amounts are real, the scenarios are real, so that we can give you actual snapshots based on those aid circumstances. So just wanted to make a quick note of that as we get started. So Sophie started with us in 5th grade, and she's now a 9th grader. She has a younger sibling that's attending another independent school locally. So that other independent school is one where where the family is paying aid there as well. The parents, they own a graphics and a local printing company, and they're bringing home $100,000 in income annually. So they're small business owners working together, and they do own their home. The family owns their home in Woodinville, and that home is valued at $850,000. So $100,000 a year in annual income, $850,000 valuation on their home for which they're paying a mortgage, and one other tuition besides EPS being paid. So EPS is providing Sophie with a grant that's meeting 85% of the cost of tuition. So what that means for Sophie's family is that their net cost for tuition each year is $5,850, and they will have some additional expenses. And Casey, would you be able to share a little bit about maybe like a number figure, if you want to pull that up, that maybe Sophie's family might be experiencing in terms of the out-of-pocket cost for some of those non-tuition expenses? If that's something that you could help with, that would be great.
Yeah, so for Sophie, if we take a look at some of the things we talked about there, 9th grader, so she doesn't need a new computer yet, but bus, food, the Education Beyond the Classroom, books, so around $5,000, and the school will cover 85% of that.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Casey, for painting that picture as well. So next, want to acquaint you with another student. So this is Taryn. So Taryn is a 10th grader at Eastside Prep. Taryn lives with his father, and his father is somebody who's working in construction. He is, as a foreman, making $125,000 annually in his income, and they do receive child support. Taryn's mother, he does not reside with her. She's not involved in his educational decisions, although she is part of his life. So she is paying some child support that's helping the family with those expenses. Taryn and his father are renting their home. And so Taryn is receiving an EPS grant that is 75% of the total tuition, and then their net tuition cost is $9,750. And again, Casey, as you pointed out, Taryn's gonna not have that laptop expense if he just recently purchased a laptop starting with us in the 9th grade. We'll have the transportation costs for where they live. And so they're actually, Taryn and his father are in Rainier Valley, so they're able to take EPS bus, so we help with the bus costs there. And then he will have education beyond the classroom expenses for his trip that he'll be going on this year, and then of course books and other supplies. So that just gives you a sense of Taryn and what their family is experiencing in terms of aid. So I'm going to give you 2 more examples, and then we want to unpack a little bit about some of the factors that go into some of these decisions so that we can make that a little bit clearer for everyone. So Jake is our 3rd student. He is a 12th grader at EPS. And Jake, in addition to being an EPS student, he also has an older sibling who is already in college and is at a private university out of state. One of Jake's parents writes grants for a nonprofit. The other is an elementary educator. And together they're earning $225,000 in total annual income. They own their home, which is in Newcastle, and that's currently valued at $550,000. And they also have a rental property that they own in Renton. So EPS is providing Jake with a grant that's meeting 60% of the cost of tuition and other educational expenses. And then the net cost of EPS tuition for Jake's family is $15,600. So Casey, can you step us through some of these additional expenses besides tuition for Jake and his family?
Yeah, so Jake is fortunate that he is a 12th grader and has a driver's license. So he is driving himself to school. So he is not taking advantage of our transportation services, but still getting help with food, getting help with books, and the education beyond the classroom once again. And as a senior, he's getting a real good helping hand with that one.
Okay, great, because we want those experiences to be all the more memorable for the students who are our oldest ones at EPS. So our 4th and final example of a student is Emily, and Emily is a 5th grader. She's just started at EPS. She has one parent who's working outside of the home, works as an HR generalist at a local tech company, and so has $150,000 in annual income. The family owns their home, and so they are with that home at a valuation of $600,000 currently. That's in Redmond. They have non-retirement liquid assets of $100,000. So Casey, we can talk a little bit about how we look at retirement assets as well as non-retirement assets, but basically $100,000 in savings that is being considered as well in the aid process. EPS is providing Emily with a grant that's meeting 30% of the cost of tuition and again, other educational expenses. And then the net cost of EPS tuition for Emily's family is $27,300. So again, Casey, if you can talk through some of those non-tuition expenses as well.
Yeah, you bet. Emily does not live in an area where our transportation goes, so she's not able to take advantage of that, but her parents seem to be okay with that. She is a new student, so she is getting a computer. So we're helping with 30% of that, in addition to the food, books, and the education beyond the classroom.
Okay, great. So, so some of the factors that we're considering as we are looking at these examples, Casey, can you talk us through what are some of these components that we would be looking at for a family? As we've been looking at these past 4 examples, we've seen a range of incomes, folks that own their home, folks that rent, different family sizes, and who's enrolled in tuition paying schools. So can you talk us through the aid considerations broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll show some examples here of what it really looks like to go through the applications with the student and support services, excuse me, that we utilize. Third party, so they go in there. And the biggest things that we have listed out here are certainly income is the biggest one. family size and the number of students at tuition paying schools. The examples we walked through, Cheryl gave you examples, other independent schools, universities, pre-K even. So that plays into net worth. Cheryl also talked a little bit about that. We mentioned families that own homes or have other liquid assets. So net worth comes into there. And then unusual expenses. You know, families unfortunately sometimes come upon things that occur. So the example we have here is unreimbursed medical expenses, which is frankly probably the one that I see the most of unusual expenses. So these are the largest items, and these kind of are in order, as I would say, of what most affect the grants that we provide.
All right, super helpful to know a little bit about what is going into all those different calculations, Casey, and just having a little bit more transparency about, all right, what are the factors going to be that our family is, going to need to share, information that our family is going to need to share, and also what's going to be considered in that aid process. So helpful to know all of that. So let's talk about that aid process now. So you folks are applying for admission to EPS. Our 21-22 admission season deadlines. We've got our January 13th deadline for admission, and then February 3rd is the financial aid application deadline that comes after that. So these are two different applications. The application for admission is happening in Ravenna. The application for financial aid, we'll talk about where to access that in SSS. And so that will be due after your admissions application is due. So that's really nice because you don't have to worry about getting both of those sets of forms in at the same point in time. When it comes to the period of re-enrollment and reapplying for aid that will happen if you're an enrolled EPS family, our annual re-enrollment period happens in January and February. So we release our re-enrollment contracts in early January. We ask for those back in early February. So we give you a full month to just take care of that paperwork and get that enrollment deposit paid if you have one owing. And then our returning families deadline for aid is going to be in early December every year. So you're actually going to get that financial aid application in so that we can ensure that your financial aid award is going to be included with your re-enrollment contract. We always want to make sure that when we're looking at new enrollment or re-enrollment, that we're helping you with knowing exactly what your financial contribution is going to be expected. At EPS, we want to be really transparent about that at the point that you're making an enrollment or re-enrollment decision. So in addition to those deadlines, just want to talk a little bit about how the decisions go. So we are not going to look at financial aid applications for new students until after the admissions decisions have been made. So our admissions committee members have no knowledge of whether a family is even applying for aid. They don't have any sense of a family's level of financial need. So it's really important for us to keep those separate from one another so that folks are knowing that our admissions decisions are made irrespective of whether or not a family is having any qualifying need in the process. When we talk about when we'll notify you, just as a reminder, and you can see these dates in Ravenna, but February 25th is going to be our notification for those applying to upper school, and then March 18th is going to be our notification for those applying to middle school. So when we are looking at returning students, we're going to actually, because you're already in and part of the process, we're going to look at those financial aid applications as they're completed, and then we'll update those awards in the re-enrollment contract, as I mentioned. But if you want to get us your information sooner than early December, you are always welcome to do that anytime after the school year starts and the aid application has opened. No problem getting that in a little bit earlier. So Casey, I'm hopeful that you can help us with some of these application pieces, because folks, if you are looking to start applying, you can do so through our financial aid page on the website. You'll find the links there, and you can also go directly to solutionsbysss.com/parents, and that is going to be able to get you to the right place as well. But we're going to start stepping you through what are some of the different forms you're going to encounter there. So Casey, tell us a little bit about just kind of getting started in SSS. Who needs to apply? If we've got multiple households, do we need multiple different forms in SSS?
Yeah, that's the best thing about using SSS ourselves and peer schools throughout the country is that you don't have to do a lot of different applications. You have to do one application for For a family, we'll have to obviously identify different siblings if you've got more than one student applying at any of the schools, but it's really nice that it's only has to be done once. Having gone through this with universities, as we've talked about before, it's not quite that easy. Yeah. The last note we have on here, if there's two households, then each parent creates separate accounts. They're not visible to each other.
Okay, great. So that's an important thing to note, that two separate households are going to have their own individual information that's not going to be shared between them. So the Family Resource Center, Casey, tell us about this one-stop shop for folks if they're needing help.
Yeah, so this is a great place if you get into school and student services, and you maybe it's not flowing real well for you. Great place to get in here and ask questions. I'll tell you from my side, even reaching out I have to reach out to these folks every year, and they answer the phone quickly and they know what they're doing. It's really nice. We're fortunate to have a good partner like this.
That is great, because sometimes that customer service experience is not always a joy, but it's nice when you get a hold of someone and get good quality information. So this is what it's going to look like when you get to the login page, and you're either going to be creating a new account or logging into your existing account. And then this navigation menu. So much like Ravenna has these satisfying green check marks for when you complete application components, the PFS, the Parent Financial Statement, is also going to have these satisfying green check marks, as well as the slightly different than Ravenna, the sort of like alarming orange exclamation point for the things that you need to still pay attention to. And then Casey, talk us through a little bit about some of Casey's tips and tricks for navigating some of these different sections in here. You yourself have filled out this form before and have an awareness of kind of the order that things are mentioned in. So tell us some of the things that would help our families. Yeah,
so you're going to hear me say this probably 3, 4, 5 times here in the next few minutes, but enter information just once. As with a lot of things, when you're filling things out online, especially if you're not doing them at exact same time, you may feel like you're being asked the same question over and over. You're really not, just kind of asking it a different way. So the key is, as I say, is just enter everything once. The area that comes in most often is with mortgage, so debt on your home. So that gets included in the home section, which we'll see here in a little bit. Doesn't get included in an area where we talk about other debts, which is often school-related debt and such forth. The other part that can get a little bit tricky is if you own a business, similar to at least one of the examples we have. So when we talk about income in here, it does take into account both W-2 income as well as your business income. So that does get called out separately. And then the monthly income and expenses here. So part of this, you'll go through and kind of fill out your family's income statement, how you get money and how you spend money on a monthly basis. Make your best estimates. You don't have to go through your last 12 months of bank accounts and look at that, but make your best estimates. Divide it by 12 if you pay it once a year, divide it by 4 if you pay it 3 times a year. So those are my starting tips and tricks.
All right, and then Casey, will you step us through additionally how we're going to actually apply to Eastside Prep? How do we know that we're doing that?
Yep. So once you start you get your account and you'll enter kind of the personal information. You'll get to, as you can see here, what is number 5 on the list. And this is where you are selecting schools. And you can select any number of schools in here. As Cheryl has pointed out, our code is 3665 in there. So that's a little shortcut, but you can also, as you can see in the top of this screen here, you can enter in the name of our school and it will pop up there. You can pick, once again, when you're going through this, one of the benefits is you can pick as many schools as you would like. So number 5 on the list, and this doesn't necessarily have to be done in order. Once you do the first 4, you can pop back in here and decide whether to add in or add out schools. And then, so you see still a little bit in the background there on the left, we've done the personal information stuff 1 through 4. We did say what schools we wanted to go to. And then we get into the beginning of the family income. It'll do these pre-screening questions. And these pre-screening questions just kind of help the system decide which questions to ask you is really what it does. So answer these questions, as accurate as you can, and then you'll get the appropriate other sections that will come up. Some will show up, some will go away. And that's kind of the last step in the starting into this.
Okay, great. And how about some of these additional expenses, Casey? You mentioned this section a little bit earlier. What do folks need to know here?
Yeah, so we have now jumped way forward in the application process. So we're in section 14. We've just gone through the first 6 through 13 are largely based off tax returns and such forth. Here is kind of coming in and asking about some of the unique expenses. As I said, I would say at least 5 times. So this is at least number 2, Cheryl. You keep track for me.
Keeping track.
Enter expenses just in one place. And once again, the trickiest one always has to do with the mortgage and the debt payments. But this just gives you a little bit here, walks you through itemizing the money you spend on a monthly basis to kind of give us a picture, give the system a picture, of once again, where your money's coming from and how are you utilizing it, ultimately to determine how much you have available to pay for education.
Okay, for our homeowners out there, what do we need to know about real estate, Casey?
Only enter mortgage once. Oh, is that 3 times now?
Okay, that's 3. 3 times.
2 more to go. So yeah, so right at the top there,
anything else you want to say about that?
Right at the top there, you'll see, do you own a home or not? If you say yes, then you're going to get a series of questions. If you say no, then you're going to get skipped by a number of things here. There is an opportunity within here if you have a second rental home, as one of our examples did. You'll be able to put that information into here. So we'll be looking for home value, when you bought it, what the purchase price was, what your current mortgage is on that. So that's what will be asked in this section.
Okay, great. So that'll be section 10 where folks will encounter that. So what is our final step when we are, we've filled in a lot of things in the form, but have we done everything? Is it all done? Are we good to go?
Not quite yet. So you got to push the button. Yeah, so once you get through and you've got all those green checks over there on the left, then you'll hit apply. You'll pay a nominal fee to turn in that application. Once you've done that, then you'll be requested to upload some of the documents. This SSS, this system, this partner of ours, will take tax documents. It can validate them on our behalf, so we are not having to interpret them. So the few things that we mentioned here, be looking for the last couple years of tax returns. Most folks probably will not have their 2021 available by the time you apply, but if you do, that's that much better. But then go back into 2020 and 2019 if possible. If you don't have 2021 tax return available, then a W-2 from your employer would be fantastic. And in addition, a recent pay stub, just to kind of give us an idea of where things are right now. And maybe the last thing here is might be the most important thing. Is the whole thing is don't get worried about if you did something wrong. You can go back and make changes at any time.
Great.
So take your best stab at it, write your notes down, figure out where you want to go back when you get more concrete information. You're fine. It'll be saved and you can go back in and make changes.
Excellent. So, so again, our aid application is not going to be due until early February. So you may have those 2021 tax documents available, but you may not. Just depends on employer or whether you're self-employed and a whole variety of different things. So, so again, use what documents you have. Give us what is available in those uploads that you'll do after completing the PDF forms, PFS forms. You'll have the opportunity to upload those as PDFs, but know that you're going to want to give us the information that's most available. So, so again, you've got this resources center, and then you will find the resources available as well in the help tab. So this is going to give you a whole bunch of other pieces of information categorically. Hopefully this is going to be a helpful set of tools for you all as you go through that that PFS. And then again, if you need help on the tech level of, sort of that online interface, technical needs that you have, maybe username, password type things, go ahead and contact SSS. They'll be the best folks to be able to help you with that. If you are wondering about kind of the numbers element of things, what is the needed documentation? As Casey told you 3 times, just include things once in different PFS forms. But if you're like, where do I put this in the different PFS forms? Email Casey, he'll be a great resource for you. And then if you want to talk about process of admissions application, the enrollment, the re-enrollment, anything pertaining to our deadlines or other expectations, go ahead and email me, and we all together will hopefully be able to guide you to the information that you need as you move through the process. So with that said, we are done here with our content for our presentation. So my hope is that we will have some questions out there, some specifics that we can help you all to answer in terms of the aid process. But before we have some questions hopefully roll in from our audience, Casey, let's talk a little bit about education beyond the classroom and funding those experiences. This is a question that our current families have recently been encountering because we just released our education beyond the classroom opportunities that students are going to be signing up for the upcoming year. So will you paint a little bit of a picture of what we mean when we're talking about helping with EBC trips and experiences?
Yeah, so EBC trips and experiences, typically the week before our school spring break. So this year it'll be in April. Our students have the opportunity to choose amongst a number of wonderful experiences. I believe it is 28 or 29 experiences that they have to choose from this year. They vary anywhere between 4 days, and sometimes they can even go up to 10 days. They can be local, they may be regional. Sometimes there's trips. Obviously, those trips have been interrupted a little bit the last couple years, but those come back. We provide aid similar to what we do for tuition and the other items. So, and the amount of aid that we provide is capped a little bit, but that cap grows as the student gets older. Because we do want, as you mentioned earlier, Cheryl, we want our all of our students to have the opportunities to participate in these different types of activities that are presented through our EBC experiences. So our students can kind of grow with the options.
Right. So just to give a sense of what those amounts are and how that works, our 5th to or 10th graders, in terms of their experiences, they're receiving a maximum of $1,000 towards those expenses. They are, for some of them, grades 5 through 7, they're going to have grade level based experiences where it's a consistent trip that everyone is participating in. So that is a good thing to know just in terms of how that aid works, that, for the most part, students are doing a consistent trip during those years, but also for purposes of the aid consideration, there can be quite a variety starting in 8th grade, as they'll have 3 different trip choices that they can choose in 8th grade, and then 9th grade and beyond, quite a number of choices. And then 11th grade, we're going to step that up to a maximum of $2,000 per EBC experience. And then in the 12th grade, a maximum of $4,000 per experience, because again, we want to, the students we are going to give their first choices for EBC experiences are going to be our oldest students. We do let 12th graders get those first choices, especially these 12th graders who missed a full year of EBC, and some of them were doing online EBCs this past year. and made the most of it. Those of us who did in-person experiences, like I was helping to advise a group of students backpacking on the Pacific Coast. We had a blast doing that, but certainly a different type of set of experiences than we've had in the past. So travel further afield, and certainly travel creates one of the greatest expenses for these trips. We know is going to be the highest for 12th graders. So we're going to give them first crack at things and give them the most support. Again, up to 1, up to 2, up to 4, just depending upon what the level of need is that we're meeting for that family. Anything that you would add to that, Casey?
Nope, I think you got it.
Okay, great. So, so with respect to the other question that we really get pretty commonly for folks is, when I am considering aid and I'm considering, kind of the process of applying, would you say that I should apply even if I don't think that I'll qualify? What would you say, Casey, to somebody who's really unsure of whether or not they'll qualify, or they're just thinking about this because of income, or they're just thinking about, well, we own our home, we're not going to qualify? What are some things that you would tell families that are on the fence about applying?
Apply. It might take you 2 hours to do the application. Filling out the application is not tremendously hard. Digging up some of the information to make sure you're being as accurate as possible, is probably where more of the time is. So if you're willing to spend a couple hours, I would do it. Is the examples that Cheryl walked us through to start with. Folks that have homes qualify. Folks that have some other liquid assets, so investments, they can also qualify. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. Maybe to circle on that a little bit, almost back up to the top. The income is the most important thing. Size of family and the number of kids at tuition paying schools are kind of 2 and 3. It does take into account net worth and unusual expenses. It doesn't take into account retirement assets. So those, if you have retirement assets, don't be concerned that those are going to be a detriment to you receiving aid. So apply. Great.
And I just want to refresh folks one more time on that list of the factors in aid determination. And really great reminder, Casey, on that retirement piece, because a lot of times folks might think, oh, am I going to have to dip into that aspect of our family savings in order to pay for my child's education? But another common question that we get, Casey, unrelated to these factors in aid determination, but for sources of funding, is, if we have a college savings plan in our child's name, or if we have college savings plans in the family, can we use a 529 or college savings plan for paying for independent school?
Yes, you can. That changed a couple years ago. So I'm not certain. It was $10,000 that could be used. I don't know if that's inched its way up a little bit, but yes, you can use 529 funds to fund undergraduate school also.
Great. So independent school, undergraduate school, if you have had the ability to tuck any of that away, that is great. That is not something that every family has been doing. It's not an expectation that we have, but that is a question that we get from time to time. Casey, can you talk about, maybe there's a family member, relative, somebody else that wants to help with paying EPS tuition. Is that going to be included in our aid consideration as a family? What do we need to know about that?
Yeah, so it can, yes. So the application should be filled out by those who are paying for the education. So we talked about that could be 2 households, perhaps parent 1 and parent 2. It could also be that that's the grandparents. The grandparents are the ones that are paying for the education. So it might be parent 1 plus the grandparents are the second household. So if I use grandparents as the example because that is the one I see the most, but there is an occasion where they will actually turn in an application also.
All right, super helpful to know that, yeah, there are occasionally some folks that are going to be such significant contributors to students' educational funding that they're going to actually want to be completing the PFS and being considered, because certainly if they are going to be eligible for aid, we want to help out with those resources. And same thing, if they're going to be on the fence about will we qualify or not, just let us know and get that application in. As Casey said, just go ahead and apply. So we want to leave just a little bit more time for additional questions that might roll in. But I just want to reiterate that as you go through this process, please, if you are spending more than just a couple minutes at all wondering about something, having a question about how do I do this, how do I do that, if you can't find the answer to that question in the PFS resources that are on the SSS website, please do contact us. We would love to illuminate whatever needs to have light shed upon it so that you are not in the dark, so that you are not wondering about what to do. We really want it to be very clear for families how to go through this process, and knowing that you're going to reapply from year to year. This is information that will help you for the future. So any notes that you take, any things that you retain from the experience, or things that can help you into the future. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us when you have questions and needs. One thing that I will mention as well, the SSS form is used by a variety of different schools. So again, Casey showed you how to select for EPS. That is an area where you can select multiple schools. Some schools are going to have different financial aid applications forms. They might use TADS or other systems. So please know that while many of us use Ravenna as our common application system, not every school is using the SSS for financial aid considerations. So you might have a couple of different financial aid applications to complete, just depending upon the schools that you're applying to. Casey, before we go, do you have any other comments that you'd like to add? Anything else for the good of the order?
No, I mean, I would just reiterate, please apply. Don't let the cost of independent school education scare you away from applying to an independent school, no matter who you are and where you are. Please join us.
Yay! Well, Casey, thank you again so much for all of your information and the tips and tricks that you've shared with us this evening. And we will look forward to being in touch with you around this process, and look forward to helping families as best we can as they move through it. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and we wish you all the best as you apply for admissions and aid and in the days to come. Take care.